Hi everyone and welcome to the Daily Citizen News Update. This week we'll be talking extensively about the riots and civil unrest that have been plaguing major cities across the U.S. But first, a quick recap of what's happened since we spoke last. In a sobering story out of Georgia, the U.S. Marshal Service announced that it has rescued 39 missing children. Operation Not Forgotten also led to the arrest of 9 people on multiple charges, including sex trafficking, parental kidnapping, and registered sex offender violations. We'll bring you updates on that story as we have them. Next up, Zach Metler has some shocking reporting involving the riots in Portland. Zach, your headline includes the words political execution. That's pretty incendiary language. What's the story behind it?
Yeah, so last Saturday, a man named Aaron Danielson took part in a pro-Trump rally with the group Patriot Prayer. And he was walking through the streets of Portland as a part of this protest, and a member of the group Antifa walked up to him and said, "Hey, we have one right here." And in video coverage of the incident, you can see him say that, and then another man walks up and says, "Oh, this one right here?" And the first guy responds, says, "Yeah, pull it out," referring to the gun. And the second man then shoots him in the chest twice, and he stumbles and falls, and police medics later said that he died on scene.
Wow. And how has the national media been reporting on the story?
Yeah, so mainstream media outlets like the New York Times and some others blame President Trump for this because President Trump is allegedly inciting violence for campaign footage for his campaign. But it's interesting because Danielson was a pro-Trump supporter, and the perpetrator of the event was a member of Antifa.
Zach, there are some that are saying that this is a tragedy that didn't have to take place, that this man didn't have to die. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so Mayor Ted Wheeler, the mayor of Portland, the day before the shooting, rejected President Trump's offer to send in additional National Guardsmen and federal law enforcement officers to help quell the riots that have been taking place in Portland for 90-plus days straight. And so people are saying that if Mayor Wheeler had not rejected that request, this possibly wouldn't have occurred.
Well, as you can imagine, the riots in Portland have led to multiple arrests, but you might be surprised at who's being led away in handcuffs. Brittany Raymer has been covering that angle. And Brittany, I was just talking with Zach about Antifa members being taken to jail, but it turns out there are teachers being arrested as well. Can you tell us more about that story?
Right. There was a protest going on in Portland that got just a little out of hand and was deemed a riot by police officers, and so they went in to break it up. And included in some of those arrested were educators ranging from a preschool teacher all the way up to a college professor. And so obviously we support the First Amendment right in free speech. It's enshrined in our Constitution, but that these educators were arrested during this protest does raise some questions about what ideology is being taught in the classroom.
So that's a great question, Brittany. Have you found any evidence in your reporting that the ideology of BLM or Antifa is seeping over into classrooms?
Yeah, actually in one particular school district in Tennessee, they sent a letter home to parents asking them not to observe what's going on in the student's classroom, citing privacy reasons. Obviously, this has parents somewhat concerned, as they should have the right as well to understand and know what's going on in their child's classroom, and it raises concerns about what's happening in school districts across the country.
So Brittany, you've done a lot of research putting this story together. What would you say to parents who are concerned about what may be happening in their child's classroom?
You know, COVID has really offered parents a very unique opportunity to be fully engaged and immersed in their child's classroom, as the classroom has really come home. And so we would encourage parents to really embrace this opportunity to be engaged with their child's education and with them as well.
Next up, a new book argues that rioting is really just shopping for free. With more on that page, Turner, Jeff Johnston.
Thanks, Michael. A recently published book is getting a lot of media attention. It's titled In Defense of Looting, A Riotous History of Uncivil Action. It was written by Vicky Osterweil, a writer, editor, and agitator who was born male but lives as a woman. The author offers a fresh argument for rioting and looting as our most powerful tools for dismantling white supremacy, and tries to justify looting and rioting as legitimate strategies of wealth redistribution and improving life for the working class. Osterweil writes about the fun of looting. It also provides people with an imaginative sense of freedom, he says, and helps them imagine a world that could be. And I think that's part of it that doesn't really get a lot of attention, that riots and looting are experienced as sort of joyous and liberatory. The author says looting attacks some of the core beliefs and structures of cis, hetero, patriarchal, racial, capitalist society, and says rioting and looting and vandalism brings communities together, and that looting is a practical, immediate form of improving life. Osterwile doesn't really like the term looting. He prefers the terms proletariat shopping and shopping for free. And the author does not say how he would respond if someone looted his property.
Finally, despite their imperfections, most Americans hold our founding fathers in high regard. But a new effort out of Washington, D.C. says it may be time to rethink that. With more on the story, Bruce Housknecht.
Thank you, Michael. In the nation's capital this week, a committee report came in, commissioned by Mayor Muriel Bowser, regarding the district's monuments, memorials, schools, buildings, streets, and bridges that are mostly named after founders, well-known historical figures in our country. That committee was tasked with figuring out whether those people owned slaves, oppressed women or other minorities, or violated any one of the 21 protected traits under the D.C. Human Rights Code. The list of people who didn't make the cut is extensive, including George Washington, Thomas Jefferson. The committee recommends that the Washington Monument and the Jefferson Memorial be either removed, renamed, or what they call contextualized. Nobody's going to pass the test, and the list includes people, in addition to Washington and Jefferson, people like Ben Franklin, Alexander Graham Bell, Francis Scott Key, Christopher Columbus, James Monroe, Andrew Jackson, Woodrow Wilson, and George Mason. These are all people with historical connections to our founding or the great moments in our history. Are these monuments going to be renamed? Not the federal ones. The city owns its own buildings and parks and schools. But those federal monuments, the Secretary of the Interior says, not on my watch. So we won't be seeing the Washington Monument and the Jefferson Memorial renamed anytime soon.
Thanks, Bruce. Those are the top stories the team has been covering. For more news behind the news, be sure to visit thedailycitizen.org, and we'll see you next week.